Alright, inmendham channel video. I guess the first thing I do is, yes, link to Doom, Gloom, and Boom, where most of my videos are. And this video will be a promotion video, I suppose, for the Fair Economics channel, which, not too many people, well, I mean, it does okay, but it's, could use more viewers. Anyway, I've done a start here video there, trying to outline the core of economic theory, from at least my perspective, what I've learned. And I guess I didn't, it's a draft version because, I didn't make it clear enough, I don't think. The real core of this whole economic system, this whole capitalism deal, is this idea of interest, of making money on investment. This idea that if you have surplus, you have a silo of wheat that you're not going to eat, that's extra, that you can somehow make that silo reproduce, do the life thing, and make more children, and have, multiply. And, through that process, just keep gleaning enough extra where eventually you don't have to farm at all anymore. You're not a farmer anymore. You're just a silo reproducer. And that's basically capitalism. It creates these individuals who just by owning silos create enough income to sustain a very nice life and continue to make even more surplus. I mean, surplus begets a surplus is basically the game. The argument will be made that somehow there's this compensating risk, where there's some sort of percentage that where people attempt to reproduce their silo and fail, and that those failures somehow compensate for the winners. And that's just nonsense. Okay, it's not like Las Vegas where all the winners' money is made out of loser money. No, it's a different kind of world. It's like a Las Vegas where all the winnings are extracted out of the tax base or some other source, there's just no there's no compensator. There's nothing that it's getting from. There's no free lunch. You have to pay for this lunch, this getting rich on nothing idea. And there's also the argument that it's not nothing, that these people attempting to reproduce their surplus will do it carefully and socially responsibly and in the social best interest somehow in the end, because that's how success is defined. You can't be successful unless that's what you're doing, is serving some sort of interest, public interest. And of course we know that's crap too, as BP demonstrates. They made money, they cut corners, and BP won't pay the bill. The consumer will pay the bill. Even if BP goes bankrupt, the consumer will pay the bill. There's just no way around it. Consumers will pay higher prices. They will pay for the mistake. The rich, some tiny percentage, will get stung, and some of their reproduction of their surplus will be interrupted, but they'll be diversified and protected from that risk, and it'll become quite irrelevant to their capacity to keep their getting richer engine running. And that's the flaws in the capitalist system. But the fundamental flaw is the idea of surplus, of interest on surplus, that somehow surplus should be profitable, that it shouldn't maintain its value. Again, I'll use analogies, but if you put an extra something away, an extra wedding dress, an extra pair of shoes, an extra anything that you have that's a redundancy. A car, let's say you have two cars and you only drive one most of the time, and you put one in the garage. You don't expect it to get more valuable. You don't expect that it's going to improve with age, that it's going to multiply, and you'll come back in 10 years and there'll be two cars. No, that's not going to happen. And that's the whole flaw in this whole capitalist system, is that you've got to suck so much value out of the system to pay people to have this luxury of, their surplus reproducing. this interest thing, this give me money just for having money. And yes, there's a certain value to encouraging people not to be frivolous and wasteful in their spending, and encourage them to do what's called saving, or creating surplus, cushion against disaster, insurance even. Those are good things. But capitalism way over rewards that behavior. It turns it into, again, some sort of profit-making enterprise, but it doesn't create anything that merits profit. It doesn't make the system work better. It doesn't create any jobs. That's just all delusionary mush. The demand creates jobs, and supply is the easy part to provide, as the federal government demonstrates every day when it creates or borrows a big ton of money. But it's the borrowing part that's a real problem, because when it borrows, it's feeding this game. It's saying, give me some of your surplus and I will reward you for it. Alright, temporarily let me use your surplus, your silo of wheat. You still have ownership of it. I'm just going to use it. And in using it, I'm going to give you more wheat back in return. So now you'll, over time, be able to have a second surplus silo. And now you'll have twice as much capacity to make more increase. And the whole system is built on these surplus silos increasing. And now we have an economic system, with all these convoluted pieces of paper. And what they've basically done is turned non-existent, surplus that doesn't exist yet, labor and enterprise and productivity that hasn't even been accomplished yet. And now somehow they've claimed ownership to that and are gaining increase off the ownership of that future labor. And so it's now like they're making money on a surplus silo that doesn't even exist. It only exists theoretically, yet they're still making a profit on owning it. And it's still reproducing, even though it doesn't exist. It's reproducing more claims of ownership out of nothing, out of something that doesn't even exist, and it's creating more non-existent existent. And so that's where the whole system has to crash and go through a reevaluation, is because none of these values mean anything anymore, because all of these pieces of paper, all these instruments that say you're entitled to a profit because you claim an ownership to a surplus. Well, the silo you're claiming ownership to is made out of nothing. It's an illusion. It's a stock certificate, saying it's valued at this many dollars, when none of the company resources, if liquidated, come anywhere close to that value. So there's no way to extract your money if it needs to be extracted. You're 1 in 40, or 1 in 50, or 1 in 90, on a dollar. So you're talking about pennies on the dollar in real value, and that has to be resolved. You can't have that circumstance perpetuated. And the point I would make, try to illustrate, try to get through to you, is that when this is allowed to run the system, this keeps running through the system, that over time everything starts becoming a rental contract. Everything is caught up in this interest payment. And so even now you could be innocently walking in the park thinking, oh, I've lived my life relatively responsibly, and I don't owe anybody anything, and blah blah blah. And in reality, every step you take, you're renting, because you, through the instrument of your government, have committed yourself, not without voting for it, to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars you don't have, and you have no prospect of ever having. You are in fact bankrupt, and you don't know it. And that's the circumstance that's been created, is that all these people out there, these little rich people, are all claiming to own this park, my feet, my life. All these things they claim ownership of, and they claim a right to glean a annual increase through a rental fee must be paid to them for their because they have a piece of paper that says so, and that blight adds up, especially when you start realizing that the only assets that can return that rental fee, the only assets that can actually produce a rental fee, are the current ones, not those phantasmagorical future profits. They can't pay the rent. Only people living today can pay the rent. Only workers today can pay the rent. So that's where, the real weakness